James will be talking about mathematics while eating his Mexican street corn salad with tomatoes and a smoothie. And this is pink grapefruit smoothie, so he's not that keen on them. So I don't know how much I'll be in the thing, so you just go ahead and talk, because I have to go harvest some tomatoes, and you'll see me in the background. That's about it.
So it's got, some of it's going to be pretty muddy back there. Oh, you're going out front here? Okay. So if you've been following the program, well, one half of our viewership, you'll remember I left off with this, the mathematics Bible page, I believe it was 230. I'll be right. Yeah, Grace Hopper. They have her in here. She was something of a computer science whiz back in the day. There are very few women in this sort of thing. Oh, they have Ada Lovelace. That's Charles Babbage's assistant or something like a computer. So they've got a picture of her. So long ago, it seems to be a painting. So he put together something called the difference engine. Spider keeps crawling on me. I don't like killing spiders. I don't like killing anything. Flies, I will. Midges and stuff like that, I will. Mosquitoes, I will. So he died 1871. So they managed to get some feminine content in here. So Bertrand Russell, for some reason or another, they managed to put Emmeline Pankhurst in here, and her sister maybe. Oh no, Christabel Pankhurst, Annie Kenny. So they, like Russell, campaigned for women's rights. So I don't know whether their picture belongs in the math Bible. That's good. Like yeah, it's good that they've got too much Lewis Carroll in here, or what was his name? Charles Lutwidge Dodson. I think it should be Dodgson, but I think he preferred Dodson. And they had Alice from Alice in Wonderland. So they managed to work in, and they left out, I think, Hypatia of Alexandria. Usually that's worked into history of mathematics. I don't know if she or her dad were very much for actually making discoveries, but was she actually killed, I think, by Christians? I'm not sure how that works out. Not sure when that was, 300 AD or something like that. Christians have had their moments, I have to say, but like I make a distinction between religions. It took them about 300 years to go beyond the point of calling out other people, other Christians as heretics, to actually whacking other Christians, and that's the Catholic Church. It's not very Christian, really, in terms of its practice. Theory, maybe. But you can't really be very Christian and have things like the Spanish Inquisition or the Italian Inquisition and, witch hunting and all this sort of stuff. It's just not very Christ-like. But, the Catholic Church keeps on saying there are two sources for Christianity. One's the Bible, the other is the Catholic Church. Yeah. So basically it's whatever they say goes. And there's a big problem with that when what they say goes falls far short of the glory of God. I'm kind of channeling one of the writers of the Bible, compilers of the Bible. I think the saying goes, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. I suspect that's something like the King James Version. Anyway, Roman numerals, and they proceed to basically, the writer, not so much writers yet, proceed to dis Roman numerals. Hey, you know, at least they're numerals. Hard to calculate with, but there we go. So what do you do if you got them? You come up with abacus. Apparently, abaci have been used in many different places. And calculus, actually, calculate comes from, I believe, stones that were used to calculate with. So that's a Roman word. So Russian abacus, I've actually seen this in operation, so don't know if they use it much anymore, but I was over there in Russia, also Belarus, White Russia, and Ukraine in 1991. I used to say just after the fall of the Soviet Union, but it's just after the fall of the Communist Party, basically. The Soviet Union outlasted the Communist Party a little bit. It made it limped to pretty well the end of that year. 1991. I was over there in October 1991. Okay, so yeah, really, here's abacus for a blind person, for use in the dark, I suppose. Much ado about nothing, so there's a lot of talk about who devised zero, cipher, no, whatever. I don't think there's any real controversy about that now, as opposed to algebra. Algebra looks as though it was devised by the Greeks, separately from before despite the name, before the Arabs. I think the great algebraists, whatever, were the Indians, actually, people from the South Asia, and they came up with zero. The Greeks were great geometers and also great number theorists. Euclid, we tend to think of as being 100% geometry, but he has a section, a fairly substantial section on number theory. So what's number theory? His most famous proof is the proof of the infinitude of prime numbers. And it's very short, unlike Andrew Wild's proof of Fermat's last theorem, which I think initially was over 100 pages, and then we had to revise it 2 years later. It comes back with even more pages. We'll see 130 down to 50 pages altogether. Could be wrong about that, check it out. So, yeah, the South Asians were the ones who came up with zero, apparently. The so-called Arabian numbers, numerals, weren't devised by the Arabs by any means. They were adopted by the Arabs, and then via the Arabs they were spread to Europe. But as I've said before, and I'll say it many, many times again, it has to be repeated. When you're reading Arabic, you read backwards by comparison with reading the Latin script or the Cyrillic script, or actually the various Indic scripts. But when you come to a numeral, you read it like that, and then you proceed again. Come to another numeral, you read it like that. So it wasn't invented by Arabs. Okay, so English mathematician John Wallis introduced the symbol for infinity. Oops, there he is. Or was. And that's potentially valuable. Polish and reverse Polish notation. Okay, so it's so there's a Polish logician, a philosopher, Lukasiewicz, something like that. There he is, looking very professorial or something like that. He's a professor at Lvov. Lvov is actually Lviv nowadays. It's in the Ukraine, western part of the Ukraine. And he was also professor at Warsaw University. After World War II, he lived in exile in Dublin. So how does Polish notation work? I'm not going to try to explain it to you, okay? It's going to take too long time. Scottish Cafe. So this is not in Scotland, it's in, it's in Poland or somewhere. Well, in Poland. So here's a memorial to Stefan Banach. I guess he was Polish. They call him a Polish mathematician. In Krakow, however they mispronounce it, Poland, or we do. So Banach spaces are named in his honor. I'd like to think he actually discovered them, but as they say with mathematics and science, very often something is named after a person who didn't actually discover it. So they came up with a Scottish book. So this is in Poland. There's a picture of a bunch of people that were involved in this kind of circle. This is at the Scottish Cafe out in Scotland. Stephen, it's probably Stefan Banner. Per Enflo and the Goose. Per Enflo seems like Per, would that be Scandinavian? Okay. Yeah, he looks kind of Scandinavian. Picture. Stan Ulan, I think it would be Stanislaus Ulan, worked on atomic bomb, if I'm not mistaken. So he was a Polish guy. Yeah, Swedish mathematician player. He contrived to construct a Banach space with neither a Schauder basis nor the approximation property, solving both problems and problem 153 at once. Awesome. I'm going to try to explain what's involved there. Lots of computer stuff. Here's Ulam spiral showing patterns of prime and composite numbers. So you probably can't see this, but you can see kind of a pattern setting up. And I gotta say, I was just looking at it when I was reading this. I finished reading it maybe 2 weeks ago or something like that. Let's just check and see. I don't know if I marked it in here. No, I didn't. But I have finished it, folks. Because I've got all the check marks, all the pages checked. Anyway, yeah, when I was reading this, I was going, what? I discovered this. But of course, he came before me, maybe almost 100 years before me. But this, the pattern sees and discovered the stuff in the spiral with the prime numbers and stuff like that. And then you start seeing this weird kind of, it's almost like a little bit of a, it's like a swastika. It's weird. So they say there's no pattern to the prime numbers, but you can see that there are patterns to it. The end of the Scottish book. Okay. The Banach-Tarski paradox. Got a camel there. A ball that looks like it could be a golf ball. Axiom of choice. So Bertrand Russell did some work on that. Playing games, game theory, all this sort of stuff. So what do you do with to win a Cadillac and let's make a deal? Here we've got some guys, John Van Neumann here, looking a little bit overweight for what I think a mathematician should be. Apparently he was a bit of a Renaissance guy, not so well after the Renaissance, at least when it came to mathematics and science. And they don't identify his colleagues here, but no, one of them, I'm pretty sure. What is his name? J. Robert Oppenheimer led the Allied successful attempt to develop an atomic bomb and also to develop the hydrogen bomb as well. So they've got, the prisoner's dilemma. I'm amazed they got away with this. One of the prisoners is a black guy, but in the 21st century, that's kind of politically incorrect. When was this put out? 2009, 2016, even more recently. And then, here, I think it might be the same guy. It looks different. But here it's another black guy in prison orange. And there's a woman. I guess they've worked out the prisoner's dilemma. She looks. Oh yeah, here's someone with kind of black hands and a very white-looking woman judge. I don't think this is a woman judge. Maybe it's a lawyer, but yeah, maybe that's a little bit racially insensitive. Playing serious games like what is this, chess with weird drafts. So yeah, they've got it with. So I think that's what we call over here checkers. It's apparently been totally solved, completely solved by computers. So their computers would have found the perfect game to play for checkers. They haven't yet for chess. They got probably just schmuck computer. Well, a schmuck computer could beat anyone, even the best. Magnus Carlsen, he's now the world number one. He looks a little bit like a smart donkey, but maybe isn't. He's got kind of that smart donkey look on his face. If you think of synonym for donkey, you might know what I'm talking about. Hopefully he's a little more humble than Gary Kasparov. Is that his name? I just seem to think he was God's gift to the world of whatever, everything. Like he got involved in alternate chronologies for the world, and he was using what he thought was his phenomenal memory to help out with people who think that there's too many years, like the Middle Ages are way too long and stuff like that. Kind of tough when the carbon-14 doesn't agree with it, the canon of eclipses doesn't agree with it, stuff like that. If he were smart, he would have done what I've been trying to do, which is look where carbon-14 readings don't agree with conventional dating, and that's before 500 BC. Anything dated, well, it's more like 700 BC, but anything dated according to the Egyptian dating system is off by basically 500 years, and then when it's dated according to so-called Sarah Flinders Petrie dating system for Egypt, it's absolutely insane. It's off by roughly 900 years. This is going back to the Old Kingdom, the first 6 dynasties of Egypt. Chris Jesus Ferguson, he looks a little bit like Christ Jesus Ferguson, except they call that a duster and a cowboy hat. Has to be black. Apparently he's very good at poker or something like that. Yeah. It'd be hilarious looking at his poker face. I'd be laughing all the time. But there we go. Let's make a deal. So here's the let's make a deal thing where, like, how do you play the game theory if you're offered a pay? Oh, Monty Hall. I think he hailed from Ottawa, Canada, like Paul Anka. Well, I'm pretty sure he came from Canada, like Paul Anka. Pretty sure Paul Anka came from Ottawa, Canada. So originally his ancestor, Anka actually means, there's actually a constellation out there that has a star in it called Anka. I think it's Phoenix. It's in the southern hemisphere, but or can be seen from the southern hemisphere. And I think Anka kind of means like a bird, a type of bird, maybe a phoenix or maybe like a dove in Arabic. So Paul Anka was actually Arabic. How did he have a Christian kind of first name, Paul? Well, I think his ancestors came from Lebanon, and at least on his dad's side, and the majority of people in Lebanon up until well into my lifetime were Christians. The real native people in Lebanon are Christian. I'm sure the official language is Arabic there, and there'd be no other. But the real natives there would be folks that were called Phoenicians way back when. Even the ancient Egyptians called them Fenku. Of course, there's something wrong with their dating system. The Phoenicians weren't supposed to have started to really cook until about after 1200 BC, maybe more like 1000 BC. So when the Egyptians in the New Kingdom, which is supposed to end 1200 BC, refer to the Fenku, the Egyptologists, in all their glamorous glory, say there's no way that could be Phoenicians. Fenku, Phoenician. Yeah, use your ears. You don't even have to be a practicing linguist or whatever, malpracticing linguist, to figure that one out. Their dating system is wrong. Not the linguist, the Egyptologist dating system. Got that straight? Oh, here's Captain Kidd trying to look chivalrous or something like that in a painting. It's actually quite a good painting. Cracking Caesar and other substitution ciphers. Well, cracking a Caesar cipher is pretty easy. I think it's just a substitution cipher of the simple sort. Al-Kindi, Abu Yusuf, Yaqub ibn Ishaq As-Saba al-Kindi. So let's just go with his last name, okay? Was considered by Cardano to be one of the 12 greatest minds of the Middle Ages. But guess what? The Middle Ages weren't exactly overflowing with great minds. But Cardano was more of a Renaissance kind of guy. So the Caliph al-Ma'mun received Greek texts from Alexandria and Egypt. Translations of these texts formed the bedrock of his House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Now, I want you to understand, you'll get lots of Muslims going around saying, wow, around the time of al-Ma'mun, maybe a little before one of his predecessors, Harun al-Rashid, maybe his direct predecessor. The Muslim world, the Arab world in particular, was way ahead of everyone. No, there's the Tang Dynasty, which had been cooking for 200 years before then. Okay? Tang Dynasty in China. The thing about the Tang Dynasty was it was very, very influenced by Buddhism. And then after 200 years of that, and for 100 years of the Tang Dynasty roughly, the empire struck back, the empire in the form of Confucianism, and it's all been downhill for China ever since, relative to other folks. There have been excrescences of more civilized sorts of things, Ming pottery, all that sort of ceramics or whatever you want to call it, but just falling behind Europe hand over fist, really. So what's al-Ma'mun? What is he called amongst Muslims? Prince of the Infidels. Prince of the Infidels. He's a bad guy. He, I think, is the one who killed off, and amongst Shiites and Sunni, he killed off the 8th Imam. Okay? I think his name was something like Razavi. Something like that. 8th Imam of the Shiites. Some of them have different numbers. Well, they have different numbers of imams. I think the most number is 12. They're called 12ers. So he was really, but Ma'mun had that guy whacked, right? There's I think he was from Mashhad or died in Mashhad. It's the second biggest city in Iran. Up in the northeast, it's almost in Afghanistan, one side, the east, and maybe even more closely located to Turkmenistan to the north, very close there. Anyway, one guy told me Islam is a religion. I paid him for it. I wasn't tutored. I was in the first class. He was saying, around 800, so that means a little after 880. Arabs were the top of the world. The majority of people in the Abbasid Empire, Ma'mun's capital was in present-day Iraq. I think it was Baghdad by that point in time. They were ahead of the world. Well, they weren't. They were maybe tied with the people of the Tang Dynasty. Then he says, I don't know what happened after that. Well, I do. It's called Islam. The majority of people in that empire at that point in time were not Muslims. And in that empire it included the learned people. They were called Greeks, they were called Jews, and they were called Persians, and nowadays we'd call them Iranians. Those were the learned people. Ma'mun was a bad guy, not just because he whacked a imam and stuff like that. He wanted to secularize their society, Muslim society. Specifically, he wanted to emphasize Persian learning, which was pretty good, but let's face it, it wasn't anything like Greek learning. There you go. A lot better than al-Kindi or whatever.
Very good harvest today. So James's Niagas tomatoes are finally ripe. So that's good. And James, you have another 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes?
3 minutes, there we go.
I can start it over again.
Yeah, once we finish. But we'll go from al-Kindi to al-Bundy. No al-Bundy in here for some reason or another. Polyalphabetic ciphers, so that sort of stuff. A lot of stuff about code. Kosuski examination. So this guy, because excuse me for yawning, code breaking kind of bores me. Hopefully it bores you too. This one's a little less boring, Bletchley Park. So this is where they broke the Enigma code. Here's an Enigma machine, I'm pretty sure. The Germans had it. They were a little bit lackadaisical, and the English managed to break the code. And apparently fairly early on, and so they basically knew what the Germans were doing. In many cases, of course, they didn't operate or act on what they knew. Why? Well, the Germans would have figured it out and changed the code. This is the thing, like there was some stupid ditz in the 70s talking about the Americans knowing, and this goes all the way up to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, knowing that Pearl Harbor was going to happen. And they just let it happen. And of course, just coincidentally, they made sure that their aircraft carriers, not their battleships, were out doing maneuvers when the Japanese were going to do it. And this stupid flunky and many stupid left-wingers are going, why didn't they let them go? Like there would have been no war. There would have been war with Japan. Okay, Japan needed oil from Indonesia to conduct their war in China. Did they need to be conducting that war in China? Guess what? No. China was never traditionally a part of anything like a Japanese empire. They had no business being there. Therefore, they had no business getting oil from people that aren't Japanese or never been part of the Japanese area in Indonesia or other places in the southeastern part of Asia. Got that straight? So there's no way the Americans were going to say to the Japanese, hey, we know you're planning to attack Pearl Harbor, don't you do it? Because all they would have done is say, how did they find, we'll change our code and then we'll attack at another time. You understand? See how these things work out? Stupid. FDR knew, and he wanted to fight so much, he let it happen, and all these guys died. 2,500 guys died. Yeah, they would have died anyway in another attack. Get real. Alan Turing. So the Turing test, this is about computers and how can you tell whether a computer is intelligent, so there's a statue of Turing in Manchester. He was actually convicted of being gay. There were laws against it, and this is, I think, into